Welcome to Central Women's Media Series Peaks. We're so thankful that you're here with us today. And we've been asking the question, where do you find God in your peaks? So hello again, I'm Christine Barella, and I'm so happy to be here today with Beth, and she's going to be sharing a peak in her life. But before we get started with your peak, Beth, first I want to welcome you and thank you in advance for sharing your amazing story, one of probably thousands in your life, so thank you so much.
Age, yes.
And so before we do that, tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I go to the Glendale campus of Central Christian, an amazing campus. If you have never been there, please come visit us. I work for a company called Parents of Addicted Loved Ones. We're a nonprofit, and what we do is we offer support group meetings for parents who have an adult child who has an addiction of some kind to some substance. We have 189 meetings across 38 states. My job is as the volunteer coordinator, and basically what I do is I get to encourage all of our volunteers. So I write letters and emails and send cards and make phone calls, and it's an exciting thing to do, unfortunately, for a sad situation that we find our country in, but
desperately needed, and what a great organization to help parents through a difficult time with that. But how many volunteers do you have? Because I know you have quite a few.
489 volunteers as of this afternoon.
489. And you're encouraging each and every one of them. What an incredible leader that is. Well, thank you for your work, for sure. And I know that families really appreciate that, as it's a very difficult time in their lives with their children. I can only imagine. So
it is, and we do have those sad stories, but we also get to hear of the good ones too. That a child has gone into recovery.
Yes.
So there's a lot of good that outweighs the bad.
Yes.
So
for sure. So, well, thank you for that. So why don't we go ahead and get started with you sharing a peak in your life that you chose to make it a peak.
Okay. This happened several years ago, and I was actually going to a women's retreat up in Prescott, and right before I was getting ready to leave for the women's retreat, where I was supposed to be doing one of the training sessions up there on encouragement, my mom went into the hospital, and I had to leave the valley with my mom in the hospital, with only my brother and my sister here to kind of watch over her. A little worried, not that they didn't love my mom and don't love my mom, but it was just kind of a controlled thing, I guess.
Yeah, because you're the one that would pretty much take care of her,
yes.
If you will. You're the main
at that time.
With
yes.
siblings, I have two, and so there's always that one that kind of takes
and that's
the lead.
where I was at in life. So I got about a quarter of a mile from my house. My friend was in the car with me, and all I kept saying to her was, I don't want to go. I want to go home. I want to go home. But she encouraged me to keep going, and mainly because she didn't want to miss the retreat. But she encouraged me to keep going, and so I did. And we got about halfway up to Prescott, and we passed a car on the side of the road that had a flat tire, and there were 3 or 4 women standing on the side of the road. And what everybody found hilarious was I recognized the back of one of the heads of the ladies. If she had had her face turned towards me, I don't know if I would have recognized her at the speed we were going, but the back of her head, and it was because I stood behind her in choir.
Oh, okay, I was going to ask, that's it.
Every Sunday, I stood behind her in choir, and the back of her head is what I saw.
You knew her hair
yes,
color,
exactly.
And style.
Exactly. So she had a little cowlick. And anyway, I said to my friend, we have to turn around. That's Donna. So we turned around, and we got there, and they had a flat tire. They were just waiting for AAA or whoever to come and pick them up. And but they had our weekend guest speaker with them. And so the guest speaker climbed in my car, and Peggy it was just such a joy, because I'd known Peggy for years. Peggy also knew who my mom, we had all gone to the same church, so Peggy knew who my mom was. Anyway, so I was able to share with Peggy that I really didn't want to have to go, and I really didn't want to have to lead this session on encouragement. I didn't feel like I could do it justice. And the whole way up there, Peggy just, as Peggy still does today, she just imbued me with enthusiasm and encouragement and love and a lot of grace. And we got up there. The next morning got up, and it was time for me to do my encouragement session, and I just did not think I could do it. And the girl who played the piano, Vicky, was there, and she came in with me, and we prayed for probably 20 minutes before the session started. And when it started, there were probably 30 to 40 women who came into that room. A lot more than what I was expecting. I was expecting 10 or 12.
Okay.
So I had these 30 or 40 women in there, and they were amazing. As much as my session was on encouragement and ways that we can encourage one another, and what the Bible tells us and how we can encourage one another, these women just poured into me. And we had moments where we were practicing. How do you encourage somebody? What's a way that you can encourage somebody? What can you say to somebody who needs encouragement? And so we were practicing all of these things.
Before you were going to speak?
No, while I was speaking, part of my session was to do training.
Okay.
You know,
Yes,
I wanted to teach them how to do it. So that's what we did, and the words that these women shared with each other, with me, by the time we walked out of there, I still wanted to go home, but
of course,
my joy was 10 times greater than it had been when I first walked in there. And it's not that hard to be an encourager, but today I feel like we've forgotten to be those women.
Yes.
That, you know, you walk into the grocery store and we're tired, we work hard, we raise our families, we work at home, taking care of the home and what have you, and it's so hard sometimes to be that person, but I really feel like that's our number one job as women, is to encourage one another.
Yes.
I think that is what God wants us to do.
I agree.
Just be an encouragement to one another.
Right. And so I love your story.
Thank you.
A couple of things. So how God showed up for you. So first of all, the flat tire. Although the ladies that had the flat tire, they probably didn't realize that it was actually a blessing in disguise, that they're stuck on the side of the road. Because God knew what you needed. And that was Peg, right? To get into your car. And so he will use us in ways like the ladies with the flat tire. Like, we'll be like, why did this happen? Or, oh my gosh, what an inconvenience. But we have to think he's got a purpose for it.
Yes.
And so he had a purpose that day for you. So when we're going through struggles too, or things that, kind of throw us off our track, whether it's a flat tire or just something that inconveniences us, that we say, we have to remember there's a plan and a purpose. And it could be to help somebody else. It could be that he's trying to teach us something. So with that flat tire, God used that to bring that encourager to you. And then she could pour into you.
Absolutely.
Which you needed. And then you allowed her to pour into you. But then what I really loved is that you sat and you prayed, knowing that you still knew you needed God to help you get through this because of your desire in your heart to go home. And he honored that because, of course, he wants you to take care of your mother. I mean, he calls us to take care of our loved ones. So just being obedient to him and praying, he got you through that and made it better than what you even ever imagined.
It was an amazing event. And I find that happens so, even in the little things in life, that if we just turn those little things, even though we don't think it's important, or it's just a mundane everyday thing, we turn that over to God, and what a great blessing that we can receive from all of that, and encouragement, and especially the joy that He has for us if we just turn everything.
Right.
Washing dishes, not my favorite thing to do.
But we have running water,
you know,
and
what?
we have dishes to wash.
Yeah, and I just, even as a mom, my son is all grown up now. But the times that we would stand there and do the dishes together, and just turning that over to God and letting Him speak through both of us to one another were some of the best times. You know, just those little things.
Yep, building memories and building relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think because life gets so busy, like you mentioned, we forget to pour into one another as women, but also we forget to pour into others.
Yes.
Like when we go to the store, checkout clerk, or even another customer in there that might be in line with us. And so we really just, part of the series is to really remind all of us just to take a moment in our day-to-day and just find the peaks. Find God in every moment, because He is everywhere all the time. And it will bring us so much joy when we find Him throughout the day. He's going to pour into us because we're looking to Him. And that's what He wants us to do. And just constantly talking to Him throughout the day, like a friend. And telling Him the truth. I'm not happy right now. I'm hot and miserable. I mean, just tell Him how you're feeling, right? It's still 109 degrees out, Lord, and it is October 2nd.
Yes.
Or whatever day it is,
I am right there with you. It's like, okay, God, we've had enough. It's time to move on to the next, But finding the joy, even sometimes in the heat, the laughter that we can share together. I'm not the only one who's hot.
Yes.
So I think it's just, again, it's just finding the little things, turning even the negatives in your life can be turned into a blessing. You just have to look for it sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
So
Agreed.
I think that that's what we don't always do.
Right.
Is we don't necessarily look for the blessing and look for ways to encourage one another.
Right. And so what I also heard you share was women pouring into women, and so really being intentional in joining a women's group, going to conferences, and just really allowing women to pour into you and you pour into others, to help us so that we can grow closer to God, but also so that we can continue to develop relationships, because God created us to be relational. And so He wants us to have those relationships for good and bad times. And so if you're watching this, ladies, and if you're super, super busy like we all are, we really want to encourage you to get involved somewhere, your church, hopefully it's Central Christian. If it's another church and you're watching this, we want to encourage you to get involved so that you can surround yourself with loving women that can pour into you, and you can pour into them, because there's much joy pouring into other people as well.
Absolutely.
As you know, you do that for a living.
Yes.
And so that's got to be awesome. So before we wrap up, is there anything else, Beth, that you would like to share with us?
I just would encourage you, those of you who are watching, just in your daily life, I just recall I had to have blood drawn, and I didn't get to tell you before we started, I had to have blood drawn this week, and the girl who was drawing my blood, I will tell you, I've got this lovely bruise on my arm, but I started talking to her about church, and she let me know that she has not been able to go to church for 7 years since she moved here, because she's got 2 autistic older children, 20 and 21, and she doesn't have a place where she can take them. And I let her know, I thanked her for telling me that, because then I can take that to our church and our leadership and say, hey, what can we do for this woman?
Right.
So, and when I left, she said, you know what, are you okay if I take your name and phone number so I can call you?
That's awesome.
She was so grateful just for that little thing, that little encouragement that I was able to give to her at a time that I wasn't real happy, but
with her poking you everywhere and a big bruise.
But to say, you can find ways to encourage people no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are. just take the time. And what is amazing in that is, as you are encouraging someone else, the joy and the peace that you get in return is tenfold what you have given out. And so that's just probably how I would end that.
Yeah, thank you. That is great advice. I want to thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to close out with a scripture, Psalms 121, 1 through 2. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. So ladies, please don't forget where our help comes from. And so I just want to thank you for joining us today. And so if you are watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe, the thumbs up. And then also if you're listening on our podcast, make sure that you have downloaded the podcast. So every week when we initiate a new podcast, it will automatically come up in your favorites. So thank you so much, ladies, and just have a great week and look for us every Tuesday. Take care now.